Recording attempt number 1,379,268. Okay. Maybe you can pick up that I've tried to start this video a couple times and I have failed miserably every time. Well, not miserably, I just sort of start rambling. So anyways, I'm going to guide you to getting a couple pieces of a little bit of software and show you some information resources, etc., to help you program and write your own M3F formulas, Mandelbrot 3D formula files. You'll basically be using existing formulas as templates and altering them, and as you get better at assembly, you'll start taking off on your own. But the first step is to look at existing formulas and change them around a little bit. So, that said, open up a Google window. You need to get a piece of software called ollydbg. So search for ollydbg. That. Enter. So you'll be grabbing it from this website. And I do use ollydbg version 1.10. There's newer versions available, but I think I don't know if they're buggy. I did not get them to work. I mean, it might have been because I was using the 64-bit version and I tried to debug a 32-bit executable. I don't know. So anyway, I'm just going to point you towards 1.10. Grab this and proceed from there. The next thing you're going to need to get is a piece of software called, you're going to want to get something called, you need to open up an executable file in ollydbg, as far as I can tell, in order to read and write information from it. So if you figure out how to do it without opening up an executable file, go ahead and tell me, but otherwise I haven't really looked way too deep into it. So for now, I mean, you could probably just Google it if you want to try to do it, but for now, you're going to need to open up an executable file in ollydbg to use as a scratch pad. This is what Luca taught me to do. So anyways, something that works really well, has a lot of zeros in it, and its memory space is debugview.EXE from sysinternals, which you can download from Microsoft TechNet. And it's also sort of funny to use debugview to view stuff in a debugger. So, you know, whatever. So that's something that I'll have you do. And then one of the other things, we have to search for the Mandelbrot 3D source code repository. So Google search for Mandelbrot 3D source code Thorgor 6 GitHub. Thorgor 6 is Andreas. He's the one maintaining and fixing up Mandelbrot 3D after Jesse handed it off to him. So go here. You're looking for one file. We want TypeDefinitions.pas, which is right here. And within this file, there's a list of data locations, so that you can access data within the Mandelbrot 3D formula with your program, with your formulas. So if you want to get the Julia values or the pixel position, depending on whether it's in Julia or non-Julia mode, you have the offsets here. Now these offsets are in decimal. That's what he wrote them out in decimal. And you'll be able to figure out how they work by looking at this. But when you're doing assembly language, you're going to be seeing them in hexadecimal. So plus 24 would be plus 18, plus 48 would be plus 30, plus 64 would be plus 40, minus 48 would be minus 30. So that's something to keep in mind, that these are written like that. A double is 8 away, every double is 8 away. You can see these integer values. So that's plus 56 to 64. then the next integer value will be 4 beyond this, or the next value will be 4 past this integer value because they take up that much space. So see how this one is 68, and then the next one is 72. And a single, I do not know. I do know doubles take up 8. Let's look at this. Oh, a single takes up 4. So that's a float single, and integers take up the same amount of space as a float single. So that's it. This is a very important file and a very important location in the file if you want to know where the things are that you want to read and write whenever you're using these formulas. And don't worry about it too much. So that I'll have this whole thing that I wrote out here in the description. So, and we already arranged Windows and ollydbg. No, we did not. So now it's time to open up ollydbg. The first time you open up ollydbg, it'll be full screen, and it might say something like, "You do not have administrative rights on this computer." So shrink it down, and then it will look something like this. The ollydbg splat thing up there, it's a bug being splatted. That's funny. Okay, so open up File and Open, and find Debug View wherever you put it, and open it. Then with this, you want to click on the what do you call it, maximize thing, so it's all filled up and stuff. And then I like to move this thing up to here, so we're only going to be using this area down here to write into stuff. So I'll have you scroll down. There's a whole bunch of zeros here in debug view, so in the memory space, which you can use as a scratch pad, which is why it's sort of cool program to use. So you have this, and you want to open up an M3F file. So you'll look in your Mandelbulb 3D directory, and let's see, can I see? I can't see that. Look at something there. Okay, yeah, I can't see that. So you'll open up M3 formulas, and you'll pick a formula out of this whole big list here. Today we will use a scaling formula. I'm going to find it. Scaling 4D plus or scaling C4D. Why don't we do scaling C4D? Yeah, that has a decent code in it. So scaling C4D looks like this when you open it up in the current version. It might be different in version 189 if you're using that. I'm using version 191, so keep that in mind. You might have a different formula. I don't know if the formulas have changed a lot. I do know there are different formulas in 191 than there are in version 1.89. So you might need to download formulas. So anyways, grab this code, Control C. You're going to cut and paste it, so Control C, and then go back to ollydbg. And you're going to have to right-click in the data area. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit. If you only select that much, or if you just select one thing and you right-click and you binary paste, it's only going to put one bit of information there. You have to highlight enough to overwrite. And if you write like this, it'll just put the first stuff in there, and it'll overwrite to here. So you're going to be overwriting data in this memory space. So make sure if you might want to erase it, fill it with zeros first, and then write it if you have other stuff written in there. But whatever you do, you're going to do that. Now, also, this is not disassembled. To disassemble it, you're going to want to right-click it and find, here, I got to be able to see this to make sure you guys can see what I'm seeing. When you right-click in the data area, there's a disassemble option. This is the disassembled code. You can change it back to hex if you want to view it in hex for whatever weird reason. but you can also just keep it in disassemble mode, and you can actually copy and paste stuff into here in, wait, where is the data now? Where is it? Okay, and sometimes you lose the data, so, or I do at least, I don't know if you will. So I just pasted it again. So you can paste it into here directly in the disassemble mode. You can just change it to disassemble mode. You have to highlight a bunch of zeros to add the code. If you don't add enough in this, once again, it will cut stuff off. So you want all the code. So once you get this code, you want to cut it and paste it into your notepad file. And let me see where that's that. And I'll put it below all this stuff down here. So here's our disassembled code. There's an initialization statement. The code that this all FLD loads stuff onto the stack. These statements multiply stuff, and this saves the data and pops it off the stack after all the multiplications are done. And wow, and then he loads a bunch of other stuff here, and he does some more multiplications, and he pops it and saves it from the stack. And here's the return statement. I gotta let the dog out 1 second. Alright. Okay. So that's broken down. One of the things that you'll run into are different opening and return statements in the different files and stuff. Some of them aren't really set up in they're all set up in streamlined ways. You don't have access to all the data in some of them, which I'll show you, I think, in a supplement to this video. We'll just work on this formula right now, and I'll explain what's going on in it. So this is a scale the 4D vector length and the 4D C vector, so it allows you to scale both of them. There's two different values. This scales the X, Y, Z, and W coordinates, and this scales the pixel add-in or the Julia components. Everything is set up here. I'll explain this in another video in a little bit more detail. So here you're loading the W component. There, first one, where I'll put it here. Loading W component. Not all some fractals will use some formulas like IFS use this for scale tracking, to track scale. So that's something to keep in mind. I noticed that in a Menger formula the other day that I was mangling, rewriting, whatever, and I noticed that this was in there, and I was like, oh, that's the W component. Why is it there? I'm going to take it out. And I took it out, and stuff got really weird and just didn't work, and I was like, okay, what did I do? Because I had changed a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And then finally I was like, okay, maybe that's something, and I looked through the code and I paid attention, and I saw that it was a scale tracking thing. So some formulas use that specifically to track scale. That's something to keep in mind. This formula, however, is just using it as a four-dimensional thing, which means that if you combine this formula with a formula that uses W to track scale, it will screw everything up. Which is, oh, well, maybe not, because you're scaling stuff anyways. Well, I guess it wouldn't. That's interesting. Yeah, so anyways, here you go, and this is your Z component. Z component is ECX. I think I should insert. So Y and X. And then you have, this is a user-defined variable. Eddie minus 10 is a user-defined variable. They start at Eddie minus 10, and then they decrement based on the size of the original thing. So if this was an integer or a single, like a single is a float, if you had the first one was single equals 1, this would be Eddie minus 10, and then this would be Eddie minus 14, because that's a single above it. But as it's written, because it's a double, this is Eddie minus 10. It's where it always starts at Eddie minus 10 and works its way down. And there's a double there, so this is Eddie minus 18. And then the next one will be Eddie minus 20, because it's a double. And, you know, and then the size, this size here determines how far down it is to the next one. Alright, so we have these two different things. So this is Eddie minus 10, I know that, and we've already seen that. Eddie minus 18 is going to be used later, so we'll see that. So let's look at, so he's loading that onto the top of the stack. The way assembly works is you have things that you stack up. So this is what position? This is 4 down the stack. This is 5 down whenever this is loaded on top. But the top position is ST0, so, or just plain old ST. So what he's doing here is he's multiplying every single one of these values here by Eddie. And then he's cleaning it off the top of the stack so that this is at the top, then this one. The fmul multiplies values and puts them back into, I think it depends on the order you put these in, but you always multiply by the top of the stack, whatever's on the top of the stack, and then you put it back somewhere, or you put it on the top of the stack. It depends on the order of these variables. Look it up. You can Google fmul assembly and you'll find instructions on it. Okay, so anyways, so he's multiplying ECX times ECX plus 8, which is the W, times the scale component, which is Eddie minus 10, and then the next one is multiply. So I'll write that in here. Okay, multiply scale, what do they call it? Scale, oh, just scale, okay. Multiply scale, what did I just do? What did I just do? I don't know what I just did. Multiply scale times W, which is ECX plus 8. And usually stuff is written like this in assembly. It doesn't matter. Case doesn't matter, but you have to write the right stuff. So there you go. That's that. And then multiply and store value in ST4. And this does something very similar, but with STs. You'll see. So times Z. ECX. I'll write this in for you too. Eddie minus 10. It's so hard to write that I'm going to do this. And store value in ST3. And ... So the same thing will happen here. I'll write all these in just in case anybody has a question about any of this. So this is going to be EDX, and this is going to be in state 2. And then we're going to get to here, and it's X, EAX, and it's in ST1. And because this says fmul p, it's popping ST0 off the top of the stack too, so that it will only be these 4 things in this order on the stack, because you have to return the stack to the same amount of, you don't want to leave extra data sitting around because it'll sit there. And in assembly language, you have to track every single piece of data. If you leave a piece of data somewhere, it shifts everything around, blah blah blah. On the stack, you want to keep track of your data. So and pop off top of stack, pop st0 st off top of stack. Okay. So you're doing that. I might have to let the dog in here in a second. So you did that. So now you're saving stuff. So save new x value to EAX and pop off stack. And that's what the FST is, a save command. Q word is a quad word. It's like a double, but it's a higher precision double. So double is 32 bits. Q word is 64 bits. That's okay. You'll figure that stuff out as you read about it online. FST is save. FSTP is save and pop data. So this does this. This does the Y value to EDX. Y value to EDX and pop off stack, so on and so forth. It's all the same. So you trace these through. If you have a question about it, you're going to have to contact me on Fractal forums, or somehow, I don't know, maybe you'll be able to track me down. So that part is done. All these the X, Y, Z, and W variables have been written to. They've been loaded. They've been multiplied by the scale factor, and they've been saved, and the stack is returned to the exact same state it was in before. Well, after initialization, you still have to do a return statement after that. So the next thing they're doing is they're loading up these values from the ESI register. The ESI register points towards, let me bring this up, this stuff. This is what they set it up to in the initialization statement. So what you have is, let's look at their code here. So ESI minus 38. Minus 38, so that's right here. Let me look at this. Let me, give me a sec. I'm wondering about minus 38. So plus 28 plus 20 plus 18, I know. This is the X, Y, Z pixel or Julia components. Minus 38, minus 24, okay. Minus 38 would be 48. It's 4D extension. Oh, okay, that's minus 38 right there, because this is 3.0, that's 3.8. So that's the 4D Julia thing. So apparently putting in that was an afterthought in the whole code. So it goes from plus 24, which is plus 18 for the X, to plus 20, plus 28, which is X, Y, Z, and then you have minus 38 is the 4D extension. So I had to figure that out while I was talking to you. I did not know what that was. So, but that's what this file is for. It tells you exactly what things are. You can pick it up from the formula. You sort of like follow the program flow and you know what the math is. But if you don't know the math already, you'll have to come over here and look in this file and look at the specific stuff and see what the data is, and then look at the manipulations of the data. And from there, you'll be able to get somewhat of a picture of what's going on. It's complicated. It can get overwhelming at times, but you'll bowl through it and you'll figure it out. That's the way it works. So, I gotta let this puppy inside. All right, buddy. All right, so next. So what they're doing is they're loading J4, which is the 4D extension. So it's the, I don't know how he calculates the 4D pixel component. I can imagine it being a Julia component that's user defined, but I actually, okay, but apparently they do it, or it's set up in the program. So anyways, that's the W loaded on top. It's st0 there, and then you got Z, Y, X, and you see these are all ESI register instead of EDI, and then we're back into the EDI register, the EDI register. And I told you before about it starts at EDI -10 and then it goes to -18 for user-defined variables. That's the direction it goes. So the first one was a double, so this one will be 8 below the first one, because it's the size of this determines how far below this one is. So like I said earlier in the video, so this is EDI -18, and you can't leave these comments in here. It will screw up the program. So this is EDI 10, this is EDI 18. If you left that in there, it would crash. Don't do that. What you can do is if you feel like it, go like this. I do this whenever I have a real long thing and I have a whole bunch of variables. I'll do something like this, and just so I can look at stuff, and I'll say, okay, so this is EDI -10, I know that's 10, and then I'll go through the list and I'll get to EDI -18. I mean, we don't need that for this one, but this is what I do. I'll make a whole big list of them and keep track of them, and then as I'm going through the program, I'll move them around so I can look at them, just to be like, because stuff gets confusing when you're me. I don't know, maybe you're smarter than me, so it might be easier for you. So you got this. EDI -18 is the scale C thing, and we just loaded all the C components. This is WC component. I should have said that. It's not W, it's actually the C component. And this is the Z C component, the Y C component, X C component, which the C component is either C components are either Julia or pixel positioned. Julia values. Does that sound good? Yeah, good enough. So, anyways, so this is it loaded this one. So now he's doing the exact same thing. Since this is just a scaling function, he's just multiplying things by the scale factor, just like he did before. He loaded the scale up, and then he's doing the same exact thing to all 4 variables, and he pops it here. So in this section, he's multiplying it by EDI -18 to each of these new things. So I'll explain it a little bit differently though. So this one is to apply ESI W component, which is ESI -38 by EDI -18 by scale C. Okay, so, and we'll leave it as multiply because that's just way cooler. And there's somebody, and pop top of stack. So you have this ESI minus plus 28 plus 28 plus 20 plus 18, and once again, just to give you it's this stuff. and this. Alright, so, whoops, where are we at? So, and some of you might know all this stuff already, and you know, like whatever. And some of you might not be familiar with it, so it's better to have a longer explanation like this. So you have this stuff here, and you finally pop it off. You have your new variables all here, and you do the exact same thing. You save them to their things, the ESI pointers directly, and you pop them off the top of the stack when you're done saving them to there. So that's very important. So throughout this whole code section, from the top, from here, from the initialization till right before the return statement, you now have the exact same data set on the stack that you had in the very beginning. You have the exact same amount of data units and the same stuff. So, and then, okay, so I got crazy relatives talking and interacting with the dog in the background. Sorry about that. Not really. Oh, jeez. Okay. So, and it's distracting me. I lost my train of thought here. So you have the exact same data on here now that you had in the beginning, except for you have to return, you have to clean up this initialization, which set up the user-defined variables, well, the Mandelball 3D variables pointer, which is the ESI that we were accessing, and the EDI pointer, and the base point, and everything. This sets up everything, and now we're going to return everything to the way it was before, and that's what this return statement does. So that's in a nutshell. This is the program, and that's what it does. And I'm going to go ahead and do a different thing, show you a couple different things in another video, but that was just a breakdown of what this formula does. And the next thing, I will teach you how to change a formula a little bit. So I hope I didn't make this too confusing for anybody. I'm going to go see what the dog's doing and play with the dog for a couple minutes before I record the next formula. Good luck. Bye-bye.